Welcome to People Matters by Shiluva. I am your host, Gulani Shilubani. In today's episode, we'll be discussing all things Mjolo, love, and relationships in the workplace. Our guest today is Nomvula Buthelezi. Nomvula, thank you so much for your time and welcome to People Matters. Please tell the peeps a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Kulani, for the invitation. I'm looking forward to having this chat with you this morning. And just a little bit about myself. I'm a human resources practitioner with a very strong focus on people matters. I have an insatiable drive to see people being advanced. I also love the fact that when people form connections, they are better positioned to collaborate, and out of that, the potential for creativity is endless. So that's my tagline. That's how I introduce myself everywhere I go, because I do believe that the best investment is in people.
Oh my goodness. I love that introduction, Nomvula, because, as an HR practitioner myself, we get a lot of flack, hey? And we are told that we are not for the people. If only people knew how much we're actually out there pushing for the people and just how passionate we are about driving people matters in the workplace. They would say HR is their friend instead of, the usual HR is not your friend kind of situation.
And that's why I always go with that position when I talk to people, because, it is very real that people have not had the best experience with our colleagues in our fraternity. Very real.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't by any means undercut it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more than that, we should do a lot more of this, where we put it out under the spotlight that we are here to do good work, and we are invested in people. And we do want to encourage that, even in our own fraternity as well.
Amen. Amen. Hallelujah, Bazalwan. Anyway, so let's get to the fun stuff. We are here to talk Mjolo, relationships in the workplace. Nomvula, have you ever dated anybody at work? Attempted to?
I actually have, but before we go there, our profession has a heavy reliance on what the law says.
Yeah.
And I just really wanted to start there.
Okay.
And talk about what does the law say in respect to this. And the very first thing the law says is there is no guidance on personal relationships in the workplace.
Yeah.
So it's not prohibited by any means. So there is no ban in terms of law or labor law on romantic or sexual relationships in the workplace. But there is a code of good practice on sexual harassment, which is something that we will deal with probably down the line when we start talking about what are the challenges of having relations in the workplace. So I just wanted to put it out there. And also with respect to workplace relationships, there is also in the constitution of this country a protection on privacy. So it's a very fine line for the employer to say what are the guiding principles around relationships in the workplace. But we'll get technical in a minute. But with respect to have I had a relationship in the workplace? I have. Did it end okay? Yes, it did. It was
okay.
We entered into a mutually respectful relationship. We worked in different departments, so there was no impact.
Okay.
In terms of how we influence each other in the workplace. We kind of ticked all the boxes that an organization would put out in the policy to guide this kind of space.
Okay, wow. All right. Yeah, I've also dated somebody at work. I don't think I went about it as diligently as you did, to be completely honest. I was a lot younger. Did it end okay? I think yes and no. But I think when we did part ways, it was respectable or respectful and amicable to a certain degree, as much as when one gets hurt or people get hurt, as amicable as that can go. But yeah,
Yeah.
Mjolo is tricky, guys. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter where it sort of like happens. It can be a lot. It can be a little bit tricky. But anyway, before I move on, I actually went on my socials and I posed the question. Should people date in the workplace? Are you team yay? Are you team nay? Are there any stories that people wanted to share? And there are two that I wanted to highlight. I'm not going to mention their names just for privacy, but there are two that actually struck me. One lady came out and she was like, yay, I met my hubby at work. And I was like, okie dokie, that's a strong one. And then another one said, I tried it once and we broke up before we declared it to HR. There was a trial period, I suppose. But I think and there are some people who are like, it's very tricky. It's going to end in tears. You shouldn't, rather wait for the person to leave or maybe you leave, etc., etc. But I suppose it is a very tricky path to navigate, especially if you are the employer, as you said, but also for the employees themselves, because you have this very complex set of circumstances that you have to navigate. As you were saying, there isn't really anything in the Labor Relations Act or the basic conditions of employment that say people can't date. The Constitution, which is the overarching law of South Africa, gives people the right to privacy, but there is a code of good practice around harassment and sexual harassment that guides that kind of circumstances that do unfortunately come up in the workplace. I'm sure you've dealt with sexual harassment cases in your consultancy. I definitely have. But what are your perceptions of workplace romances? Are you team yay or are you team nay?
So as an individual, I think I'm conflicted.
Yeah.
Because I have been in a workplace romantic setting.
Yeah.
As a professional, I'm definitely team nay. Because I know all the pitfalls that come with it. And I'm more of a proactive avoidance type professional, more than now that things are broken, how do we fix them type professional. So if I were to give guidance to an employer, a client, what I would say to them is create very clear boundaries around what are your ethics, what are your values that inform your ethics, what are your policies around these kinds of things, because once you step into the territory of having personal, romantic, sexual relationships, you're also stepping into the territory of nepotism in the workplace.
Yes.
Especially when you're now like the first lady who commented and said, I found my husband at work. It's great, but what happens if your husband or your wife or either party, because it's not just husband and wife partnership, any party or partner in this relationship is in a position of influence. They can influence how you grow in the organization. They can influence how your benefits and remuneration is structured.
Of course.
All of those things then start to muddy the waters. So my guidance would always be have very clear policies. Put it in your employment contract. Fraternization is or isn't supported. If it is, you need to disclose it. If it isn't, these are the consequences of being found out to be fraternizing in the workspace.
Yeah. I must say, I am a hopeless romantic. So I think I would be team yay, but with extreme caution, because I think hey man, maybe your husband is sitting somewhere in the office building and you just don't know yet. Or your life partner, or somebody you're supposed to spend the rest of your life with. You don't know where you're going to meet that person, and sometimes it is the workplace. But that's why I say I am team yay with extreme caution. Like you said, have the policies in place. Make sure. I would also, if I was the one drafting the policy, I would say that people within the same department would be not a good idea to sort of like date. Like you said, next thing now you're dating your manager, et cetera, because then that's where the waters get a little bit muddy as well. Declaration for me is as an absolute must as well. People do need to do it, because now when we're dealing with workplace issues, like I always say, people bring their entire selves into the workplace. Now you are with this other person. You left the house and you had a fight, and now it comes murky's the water at work. As an HR professional, now I have to deal with issues of the household. So declaration for me is very, very important. Having separate departments, people date from separate departments would be a good idea. That way, it becomes a little less messy. Not to say that it won't get messy, but a little bit less messy. But also, I don't feel like I am stepping in the way of people living happily ever after, the romantic in me.
So I came across an article while I was just brushing up on preparing for this engagement.
Yeah.
And I came across one that talks about the positive psychological impact of when relationships are good and stable in the workplace. So
Okay.
one of the things they say is because we spend quite a lot of our time, our waking time in the workplace, if you are a couple in the workplace in the same organization, preferably in different departments or divisions of the organization, you guys function in the same culture. So you bring that positive psychological thing about being happy at work, probably take lunches together, etc. They say that it has a increasing effect on productivity in the workplace when the relationship is good, because you both want to come to work and you both are happy at work, and things work for you guys. And it also says that for couples that are married, working in the same space, it also helps with the longevity of their marriage. So there are some positive aspects to having relationships in the workplace.
Was this article written by a woman or a man?
I actually didn't look into that, but I'll send you the link. Maybe you can add it.
I'll definitely add it to the description of this particular episode, because I think it would be very interesting. I mean, a lot of men I talk to don't want to have their significant other at work with them, but maybe things have changed, right? And now people, especially after the spicy flu, I always say that human beings are made for connection. We spent an entire couple of years, actually 2.5 years apart from one another. And now I think everybody is craving that sense of connection, that sense of belonging. And maybe that has changed a lot of how workplace relationships actually happen and are navigated right now in this new era, post-spicy flu era of work.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, this article that I'll share the link with you on the positive impact of having relationships in the workplace. I just want to add that it's like a couple of lines. It's not even what you would constitute as a paragraph.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
There's a lot of caution.
Yeah.
Generally, when you go out and you do your research around the impact of having relationships in the workplace, because generally what we deal with as people practitioners is the fallout when things go bad. And that presents complications for us that can be legal, that can be emotional, that can border on ethics, productivity, criminality. There's so much that can go wrong. So most of the articles you will find caution against relationships in the workplace.
Okay, well, so let's have that discussion, right? And let's talk about what are some of the most common pitfalls and challenges that people face when navigating a romantic or Mjolo within the workplace.
So the most obvious one is definitely the impact on stakeholders. So usually when people talk about stakeholders, they think about the shareholders and they think about the investors, but stakeholders is everybody that's involved in that business. From the employer, the employees, people who rank in terms of their responsibility from a managerial perspective, the owners, people who are wanting to join the organization, job applicants, clients, suppliers, contractors. So anyone who is going to contribute in some way or form to that organization as a stakeholder.
Okay.
And the perception that they may have, for example, if you are a person like an owner, you hold influence, you hold both influence and power, right?
Yes.
And you can hire and fire. And you then engage in a personal relationship in the workplace.
Yeah.
If it's going well, great. But if it's not going well, then it can turn into a grievance on constructive dismissal. It can turn into a grievance on sexual harassment. It can turn into a grievance about abuse of power or people feeling threatened or people being getting preferential treatment, favoritism, nepotism. So it can spin out into all of these unwanted consequences of engaging in relationships in the workplace. And also for the other people who are observing.
Yeah.
So if you are in a team and it is known that Nomvula has a personal relationship with a person who holds influence and power, even if I have sufficient annual leave, people who are watching from the outside can say, oh, she's never at work. It's because she has a relationship with the CEO or the COO, so she can come and go as she pleases.
Yeah.
Not taking into consideration that I actually applied for my leave and it was approved using correct channel. Remember, there's subjective, people are looking at this in a very subjective way in relation to them. So someone who has been denied leave will say, I applied for leave, but it was rejected. They don't look at all the additional reasons why it was rejected.
Yes.
They'll just say, mine was rejected, hers was approved because she has a relationship with someone who has power and influence. Right?
Yeah.
The worst time in any organization is bonus season, is salary review season. People have different lifestyles, different spending habits, different XYZ.
Yeah.
Again, when you are in a relationship with someone with power and influence in the organization, and it is known, come that season, and a couple of months down the line, you buy yourself a new car or you move into a new property. It's like, it's because she has a relationship with XYZ.
Yeah.
So we all got a 5% increase and she got a 25%. That's perception.
Yeah.
There's no fact driving this, but the fact that it is known that there's a relationship happening here in the workplace, it means you are exempted from everything everybody else has to comply with, and you get preferential treatment where other people do not have that privilege.
And I think it almost puts people in a position where they feel like they have to overcompensate and sort of like make certain things known that is unnecessarily, they don't need to necessarily make known, right? Like in the example that you gave, I have sufficient annual leave, but now I have to go now declare that, oh, I do have annual leave. You see, I did put in my leave using the proper channels, etc., etc. So it does put people in a position where they kind of have to now play open cards unnecessarily. But I suppose that's the price you pay for love.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just it can become a burden, like you say. It absolutely can become a burden because your integrity gets questioned, both parties involved.
Yeah.
Your performance gets questioned, both parties involved. If one person has some kind of personal agenda with you, they will lump in the fact that you are being treated differently because you're in a relationship. Most of the time, people who have peer-to-peer relationships and there's no authority handed to any of those people, nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
Most people are very accepting. They usually go, Nomvula and John are together.
Yes.
Those two. You see them always holding hands, going to lunch. Can you see the narrative changes?
It changes completely,
Nobody cares.
100%. But
in fact, it's encouraged. Like, oh, they look so beautiful together. Yes, relationship goals.
But the minute invite us to the wedding.
Exactly. The minute one of the people involved in that relationship have some kind of influence or power, then that's where most of the problems come in workplace relationships.
Yeah, and I almost think, and I might be a little bit biased here, maybe because of the kind of cases I've been exposed to in my career, but I almost feel like if a woman dates a man who's in a senior position, that woman gets a lot more flack, right? And goes through a lot more, has a lot more people looking at her with the, with binoculars or whatever that, a magnifying glass, that's the word I was looking for. But the dynamic is actually quite different if a senior woman is dating a junior man, if that makes sense. The guy does not go through half of the flack that a woman would. Or am I wrong? Or is that just my perception?
No, that is actually quite correct because remember, there's so many dynamics. We're human beings, right? At play at any one time. So if a junior ranking woman dates a senior ranking woman, irrespective of her hard work, how diligent she is, how knowledgeable and skilled she is, how much experience she has, anything she achieves in that space will always be appropriated to, it's because she's dating a senior person in the organization.
Yeah.
However, if a man has no influence or no power and the woman is the one who is senior, it's like nobody actually talks about all of those things. Any kind of merit, he earned it. He worked hard for it.
Yes.
Not because he's a woman who is senior ranking in the organization. So the double standard is massive from that perspective. Nobody ever says the man was pushed up the ladder because he is dating a senior ranking woman. But immediately comes to light that a very deserving, hardworking, talented woman is going up the ladder in the corporate setting and it is known she is dating someone with power and influence, then it has absolutely nothing to do with all of her knowledge. It's like everything she knows, all of her education gets erased. All of her experience gets erased. Everything gets attributed to the fact that this particular woman climbed the ranks because she had this relationship.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is what the dynamic is. And I haven't, unfortunately, had to deal with a case where it's a same-sex couple. I've never had that experience in my career, but one would wonder what those kind of dynamics are, because I think, heterosexual relationships and gay relationships are treated completely different. And it would be interesting to actually find out what the dynamic is and how those particular relationships are navigated as well. But I completely agree with you. There are so many double standards when it does come to heterosexual relationships in the workplace. But like I said, I'm a hopeless romantic. I'm one not to stand in the way of love. What advice would you give somebody who is interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with a coworker, but is worried about the potential risks and complications that a workplace relationship brings into play?
So the very first thing I would give advice on is read your contract.
Yeah.
What does your contract say about having a relationship at work? If your contract clearly outlines that the employer does not agree with fraternization in the workplace, then you need to rethink that. If you really are invested in that relationship, you probably have to find a different job so that you can have the relationship with that person. So one of you has to compromise and leave so that you can ignite the passion that's burning between the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, check your policies, because sometimes it may not be written in your employment contract. Check what the company policy says about fraternization.
Yeah.
If the policy says that it's good and well to have a personal relationship, just make sure you have your disclosures done with human resources or with management or whoever you need to disclose to. Tick that box.
Definitely.
Tick that box. Don't leave it and say, I'll do it. Because the longer you leave it, should something come up down the line, it will look as though you had been dishonest all along. So you were hiding this relationship all along because you didn't disclose it. And now that something is happening and it's coming to light, even if you are in the right, people will be very suspicious around your intention.
Yeah.
If the policy says disclose it, why didn't you disclose it? Why is it only coming to light now that something has gone wrong? So that would be my guidance.
Yeah, I want to agree with you on that one. And I think there've been a number of cases overseas, especially where high-ranking CEOs have now, found love in the workplace. And then obviously some of them have gotten fired because they didn't declare. I think there's one case, the one I'm thinking about is McDonald's, but I could be wrong. And then there've been others where I know of a couple who also, started working together, fell in love, and the lady had to resign because, there was a no fraternization policy in their workplace, and she had to resign and find a new job. And luckily for them, it didn't end in tears, as the kids would say. They are still happily married and raising a beautiful family together. But I agree with you. I think number one is to really decide whether this relationship is for you as well. From the get-go, it shouldn't be a situation where we are figuring things out. It's your career at play, it's your heart at play. So you need to make sure that this person that you are wanting to pursue a future with, whether it goes wrong or it goes right, there should never be any regret. And I agree, check your employment contract, see what the policy says, and declare. The same way you would declare if you had interests that conflict with your employer. Declare the fact that you've fallen in love with Jimmy from accounting.
Mm-hmm. But one of the things we're missing in this conversation is about relationships where there's an external third party involved.
Okay.
So you're having an affair at work, and you have a partner at home. And the person who is at home comes to find out. And most of the time, where emotions are involved, this then ends up seeping into the workplace. So the angry spouse comes into the workplace and says, "You're the person who's busy with my partner." And then it becomes a spectacle at work, right? Then it becomes the HR issue that needs to be managed, right? Then it turns and it becomes a problem. And the reason we almost often get involved is we have an accountability to ensure that we minimize and mitigate all reputational damage
and
in terms of and in terms of the public perception of the organization in the public space. And now we live in a world of social media. People don't even come up to your workplace for confrontation anymore. They call you out on social media as long as they know what your handle is. That's Nomvula Buthelezi. And they'll come and they'll choose the best space, which would be LinkedIn. It's a professional space.
Yeah.
This woman at Nomvula Buthelezi, she calls herself this, and I found out she's busy with my partner.
And I have...
While under the pretense of being at work. Then they add the employer? Does the organization support this kind of behavior? And then that's when you're stepping into reputational damage thing. Because not only has your own private relationship that is protected by the Constitution become public, but your employer has been dragged into this. Now they have to answer so that they can salvage their reputation.
Of course, because at the end of the day, if they're blasting the name of Shaluva to say, is this what you stand for, Shaluva, for people to, be having extramarital affairs in the workplace, as an organization and as an owner of the organization, I want to distance myself from that kind of reputation, because at the end of the day, that ruins my public image. And that's when, like you say, practitioners like myself and you have to come in and basically save the day.
Yeah.
And that's where...
And there's another aspect as well that we also need to add, talking about third parties, Kulani. It's the fact what happens when people get divorced.
Oy.
I mean, I know of cases where, you getting divorced from your husband. You filed irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
And you should have the employer to say, you guys knew that my partner was having a relationship, and because of that relationship, this is where we are today.
Yeah.
And the employer then gets dragged into this thing, sitting in court and saying, wow, as a representative of the employer, were you aware that this relationship was happening? Do you have a policy that talks about disclosure of relationships?
Yeah.
And then all of your internal content becomes public. Because whatever the judgment is, that judgment then becomes case law, then it becomes public. And you get named unintentionally in something that has absolutely nothing to do with you in the first instance.
Exactly. I mean,
divorced because of an affair the one partner had at work.
Yeah. And I think these are, and I suppose this is why we're having this conversation, right? It's to actually make people aware of the nuances that romantic relationships actually do bring into the workplace. As much as I am team, find your person where you can find your person, but it's important that you truly understand exactly what you're getting yourself into, especially so if you already are in a pre-existing marriage, relationship, lifelong partnership. Now that adds a complete different dynamic, because I can guarantee you any employer that gets dragged into the personal affairs of an employee and it becomes public knowledge, you are going to be sitting in a disciplinary hearing so fast, it's going to make your head spin.
Yeah. But also the other element of the third party is workplace relationships tend to harm the morale of those in the organization that are watching.
Mm.
They do have a way of creating a hostile, maybe not hostile, but an untrusting working environment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then rumors can build up and their momentum can grow, and then the gossip will spread. And what is the impact of that? All of the time when you speak from a professional setting, everybody wants to know what is the impact? What does the
Yes.
data say?
Yeah.
How does it influence productivity? Time is wasted. That is an impact on productivity. That is an impact on revenue.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I want to throw another spanner in the wheels in this conversation. Forget third parties. Jimmy in accounting is dating both Nomvula and Gulani in the workplace. And everybody knows that Jimmy is dating both Nomvula and Gulani, except for Gulani and Nomvula, right? The day one of us finds out that Jimmy in accounting is, dating the both of us, I come across from this particular department and you come from another department, and we're having this now. There's a big issue to say, hey, you're with my person, and you're like, no, you're with my person. And it becomes very, and there have been many cases of that, where one person is dating two people in the organization, and now you find yourself in the middle of this as an HR practitioner, and you're like, yeah, this is not exactly what I signed up for. But
no, it isn't.
But you have to navigate it, right? Because now the workplace is a spectacle, because here are these two people bringing their personal lives into the workplace, because now they're dating Jimmy from accounting. And if your name is Jimmy and you're listening, I'm sorry. It's just the first name I thought of. Don't come for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, so many things with that scenario can go wrong. Yeah. So the first thing that could come up is two mature people find out they're dating the same person in the same organization. Mm-hmm. They could have a sit down and resolve it privately. It is a private matter, right?
Yeah.
And they can deal with it outside of the workspace.
Yes.
In a very mature way. Nobody ever hears about it. They decide what they decide, and then it goes away quietly. Mm. The other extreme is one can be a complete psychopath or sociopath and attack the other one in the workplace. Then it becomes both a misconduct and a criminal act in the workplace. Because if the one assaults the other one, it's misconduct and it's a criminal act. The one who has assaulted can go to the police and open up a case of assault against the one who assaulted, right? So now it becomes this massive thing.
Are we laughing because it's funny, or are we laughing because we're traumatized?
It's traumatic. That's why we're laughing. Because now we are straddling two lanes.
Yeah.
Because there's aspects of someone is going to lay a grievance against someone, or they're both going to lay grievances against each other. Mm-hmm. Then we also need to look at what our policy says and look at where the misconduct was. Was it on one or both sides? Mm-hmm. Now it looks like we're picking. We are indirectly involved now in this relationship.
Yeah.
We are party number 4. Because we're now the referee as well, and then we're whipping out all our policies to say, this is what our values say, this is what our ethics say. We may or may not have a disclosure policy around fraternization. It just becomes, you beat the other one. Our policy says you may not attack physically or verbally another employee. So now we're going to have to suspend you and charge you. It's time. This is time taken away from the business. Yeah. Now you have to suspend all 3 of them, right? Because you're investigating. You can't investigate one person. No. So there's 3 departments. So if they're in 3 departments, there's a headcount loss for each department. Productivity decline in each department. How much time it takes. It's taking me away from all the amazing things I want to do for the organization, in driving or
100%.
people matters, all of my focus and attention is on this now. I'm
Yeah.
taking statements. I'm asking for access cards. I'm looking at video footage. You understand how much energy goes behind this?
Yeah,
And money.
exactly. And you're drawing up charges. You have to now find an external chair to chair that matter. The matter is chaired. Maybe people are found guilty. Now we are having to go to the CCMA. Guys, it's a lot, hey? It really, really
Time
is a
equals
lot.
money. So you can actually measure the impact on a negative experience in the organization. And that's generally why I would always give guidance
Mm-hmm.
to employers that I
Yeah.
support to say, have policies in place, have a very clearly defined nepotism policy.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's not even about the fact that the relationship is romantic or sexual in nature. It can just be a brother-sister relationship. I'm
Mm.
in HR, my brother's unemployed. I know there's a position in that department. I go speak to that manager and say, hi, my brother. So go quick and easy here. I have his CV already. You see, he ticks all the boxes. And I might be a very influential HR person.
Yeah.
And then that manager goes, oh, okay, if you say so. If my brother's not performing, are they going to escalate my brother to the same HR person who put them in? No, they're not.
Actually,
Then they have to stomach this poor performance from this person because the person they need to escalate to is the same person who, what is it called? Parachuted the
yes.
other one. So in terms of guidance, have a very clear nepotism policy in place. Then have a fraternization policy. What happens when people fall in love? Because these things happen.
They do.
What safeguards do you have for yourself? What is acceptable behavior? What is deemed unacceptable behavior? How do you protect your reputation as the employer?
Yeah, yeah, you're quite right. When you're talking about, outside of Mjolo and romantic relationships, where nepotism and favoritism does come into play. I actually supported a particular organization, and there was, the level of favoritism between these two people. One of them, unfortunately, just happened to be the head of the organization. The other person was led one of the departments in the organization. But I had been in that organization 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes, it was already apparent to me that there is a very good relationship here, but it's based on favoritism. So much so that the director used to defend this person tooth and nail to anybody who would come against anything that this other person did or did not like. And it was so bad that not only did it affect her particular department or this person's particular department, but it affected the entire organization. So much so that staff turnover was so high. People were so unhappy in the workplace. It actually started to affect the well-being and the overall well-being, and especially the mental well-being of other people within the organization as well. And it's unfortunate that sometimes, even myself as an HR practitioner, there's only so much I can do. And especially when you're dealing with an executive who doesn't want to be told, sometimes.
We've all worked with that kind of business partner in our profession.
Oh, yeah.
We definitely all have. And you're quite right in terms of what is the impact of having these relationships in the workplace. And one of the biggest impacts is exactly what you said now, turnover.
Yeah.
Employee satisfaction declines, employee turnover increases, the trust relationship between the employer and the employee broadly is compromised.
Yeah.
The reputation of the organization, it's people are like, even new applicants, they also do their research on an organization, right?
Yes.
So they find this amazing job opportunity, they go through the interviews, then they start asking the people who may have even left that organization, why did you leave? And then the feedback comes up. I left
Mm.
because there's nepotism, because there's favoritism, because this one person is never held accountable because they are linked to a person of influence and power in the organization. And then
Yeah.
what happens as a people practitioner? You found this one amazing candidate, you're ready to make an offer. They come back and they say, actually, I've changed my mind. Thank you for the opportunity, but I'll pass.
Yep.
And you don't even know why they're passing because a lot of people aren't comfortable to share that. But if you are fortunate enough to share that, to get that feedback from that possible applicant, that stakeholder engaged in that behavior in that business, especially if they own that business, they'll tell you that person wasn't a fit for this environment anyway. If that's how they think, we don't want them here.
Oh my goodness. I actually think I need to start a support group for all HR and labor law practitioners just so we can come
Please,
together and just
please.
vent, because I think sometimes, people don't really understand the kind of fights that we enter when we're dealing with executives in the workplace, because goodness gracious me, it is a lot. I've canceled contracts with organizations because I just don't want to deal with that kind of person who leads the organization. And people will often come back and say, "Oh, but why did you leave us? We really needed you, etc." And I'm like, I'll just say it wasn't a right fit for me and keep it moving, because I honestly want to work with the kind of organizations that value their people, that value the contribution that people bring into the workplace. Because at the end of the day, you don't have an organization without the people who build and run the organization. And if I'm having to hit my head against a wall every time I have to advocate for people, I know that's the kind of place that doesn't nurture the work that I want to do. I know there are many HR practitioners that want to just, follow want to sort of like the book. But yes, we follow the book, but we're also not dealing with a brick. You're dealing with human beings. We are so dynamic. We're like an onion. There's so many layers to us that we can't just say, oh, this is the book and deal and, just keep it moving. So I suppose I'm one of those who, people focused, heart focused, but ultimately coloring within the lines still.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there with you. And we were laughing, but there isn't, you can walk into any organization. You'll never find the HR division for HR people, where HR people go and escalate the issues they have.
Amen. Hallelujah.
There is not, I've yet to find it. There
Nomvula.
never is an HR division for HR people.
Yes. Who do I go to as HR to go declare my Mjolo with Jimmy from accounting? Myself?
Interesting, ne?
So interesting. So interesting. So interesting. Nomvula, as we just come to a close, I know we've spoken a lot about, having policies in place, making sure that people understand what the lines that they need to color, keep coloring within are. But over and above that, what else do you think organizations can do? And what else can HR practitioners do to, I suppose, maybe let people find love, and if it is finding love, but also protect people from sexual harassment within the workplace and harassment in general, but without being, we're always told that we're intrusive, HR is the stopper of nice things. you know, in organizations. But that, how do we foster better relationships that will help people if they do find the love of their life from the within an organization that they work for? How do we set clear boundaries and guidelines without being intrusive and so-called the stopper of nice things?
So the one answer that comes into my mind immediately is culture.
Yeah.
When we get labeled stoppers of nice things, that's when we start enforcing rules, policies,
Yes.
law. But the culture work, nobody actually gives credit for what goes into doing culture work. The values of the organization is culture work. Having a foundation where people understand what the values are, be it integrity, respecting people's dignity, respecting people's privacy, having an equitable environment, whatever the foundational values are of the organization. Those usually, if people subscribe to them in earnest, help in mitigating quite a lot of this stuff. And also having very clear ethics guidelines in an organization. I know some really big corporations have what they would call a ethics line. It's a service that is provided by an external third party, number one, meaning no one in the organization can influence or intercept it. Number two, you can choose to declare who you are, or you can make a report or submission anonymously. So I always advocate for having that kind of facility in the workplace. The other facility I advocate for, which is also external, is a wellness program, some kind of employee assistance program, where people have access to emotional, psychological, legal, financial guidance and support. That kind of practice I always advocate for, because maybe you are having a relationship at work and it is crappy, so you can't sleep at night and you can't perform at work. Pick up the phone, somebody will be there to guide you, to let you know what tools you can apply to pull yourself up again, or whatever the situation is, right? So culture work, very important. Values, very important. Defining ethics in the organization, extremely important. And having some kind of emotional, psychological wellness space that people can go to. Then there's us as well. So all of the things I mentioned here, we are custodians of
those things.
And I think what's really important in our role is to ensure that we always are impartial. We don't get involved. We don't take sides. We look at the best interest of both the employer and the employee. We do what's right. And sometimes when we do what's right, that's when we attract certain labels like destroyers of joy. But like how we started this conversation, look at what the law says. In the absence of the law, what are the guiding principles in terms of the policies that you implement in your business, in your organization, that will help you to navigate these choppy waters? Because when it's going great, it's really amazing.
But when it sucks, it really sucks.
Yeah, and then we have to come in with our firefighting uniform and kind of fix everything for everyone.
Yeah.
Nomvula,
thank you so much once again for your time. If people are looking for HR support, where do they find you? What are the details?
So I am on LinkedIn. My company page is Zamashenge Consulting. I am on Twitter, so my LinkedIn and my Twitter are linked. So Zamashenge_cons on Twitter and on Instagram. So usually when I do put comments out onto social media, I use primarily my LinkedIn page and it feeds into my Twitter page. But I am also available on a blended type of profile on Instagram, also Zamashenge _cons. That's the handle. I think I'm more personable on Instagram because you get to see a little bit of my family as well.
Yeah.
But those are the sites you would find me on under Zamashanya Consulting.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, until next time, thank you and chat soon. Bye, everybody.